Let's see. Hey, Cole. Cole, will you please grab me like a LaCroix or whatever, and would you please remind them to keep the volume down because Daddy's working? Thanks. Ozzy, leave Michael alone. Come. Good boy. What a good boy you are. Thank you. All right. Everyone had a good weekend? Yes. Anybody do anything interesting?
I went tubing.
Oh, that's fun. Thank you, sweetheart.
Yes.
All right,
So
cool.
my friends collected shoes. They got 13 shoes? Yeah, and they actually found like a pair of their friends' water shoes that they like lost like 2 years prior. But they didn't remember that he lost them until they threw them away. So
Huh.
all that work.
All right, then that's interesting. I was telling the younger group, I want to make sure you guys hear it too. Next week, right after class is over, very shortly after class is over, I am leaving town for Virginia to go deal with some things I have to handle with my father. If you don't know, he's had 2 strokes since May, and he's not been in the best shape, and it's been a rough couple months of sheer insanity. So anyway, I have to go do some things with him, my sister, take care of some stuff in Virginia. I'll be back before class the following Tuesday. I'm taking my grading with me, but if it takes a while to get your grades back next week, that's why. It's because I'm, not in a place where I can get internet and access things, or don't have the time because I'm dealing with whatever. Just so you guys know. Yeah. I know it's okay. All right, so we're gonna enter now our ecology unit, and what we're doing this year is, remember, we're doing tests at the end of every unit, not at the end of every lesson or chapter like we've done in the past. I'm spreading the tests out more because I think, 1, it's less for you to keep track of. 2, it requires more retention over time, which is really good. And I'd like to see y'all do that. Not have to remember stuff just so quickly, but over time. So our 3rd unit is going to be on cells, and that'll be in a couple more weeks, but we're doing our ecology unit right now. So first things first, your test. Everybody here has completed the test, so I can talk about it. I wanted to go over your most frequently missed question on your test, and it was this one right here. 2 or more different atoms combined in definite proportions to form what? Now your answer is compound. So what I want to know is, can somebody explain to me why compound is a better answer than molecule? Because those of you who got it wrong probably answered molecule. Does somebody, Michael, what do you want to say?
Is it 1 atom a molecule?
1 atom? No, not 1 atom.
No.
Getting close. All right,
1
so
element?
yeah, you're getting closer. Okay, so here's what it comes down to. Your atoms are your smallest particles of that's still the element, right? It contains the qualities of the element. You break it down into subatomic particles, you're not the element anymore. And you can have a molecule, though, that is composed of 2 of the same element. Oxygen's a great example. Oxygen never goes out alone. He doesn't like it. He always goes out with his friend. They're always O2. Okay, so O2 is a molecule, it's not a compound, right? If you have 2 different, you're going to be a compound. Now, here's the other thing to think about. People start thinking, all right, wait a minute. Well, what about water? You hear the term water molecule. You do hear the term water molecule. Okay, so compounds that contain molecular bonds can be called molecules. So water is a good example. So water is a molecule because it contains molecular bonds, but it's also a compound because it contains 2 different elements. So all compounds are molecules, but not all molecules are compounds. So O2, H2, these things are not compounds, but they are molecules. Does that make sense? So a molecule can be made up of 2 atoms of the same kind, as when oxygen binds together to make an oxygen molecule, O2. However, compounds made up of 2 or more different types of atoms. So if your question asks 2 or more different atoms combined in definite proportions, they're going to form a compound because it's 2 different, right? That's, if you remember it, it gets more complicated, but if you remember that is on the basis there, that's the very surface, then you're good. Molecules can be the same element, whereas compounds cannot. All right, so then, what's ecology? All right, you've heard the term a million times in your life, I'm sure. So here's our planet, and you got your living planet, which your book was the first heading. So biosphere, what's the biosphere? Who can give me a definition for biosphere? That is, yeah, that is. All right, so your biosphere is all your ecosystems on the planet, everything, right? All your living things on the planet. So then what does that mean? So biosphere is composed of a couple different things. So population, who can tell me what a population is specifically? Got it? A group of organisms. Okay, so if you are a group of the same organisms in the same ecosystem, same species, you're a population. If you're in an ecosystem, but you're different species, you're not part of a population, you're part of the community. So if you have, one particular species of worm in a square cubic foot of dirt, that's the population of that worm, but your community is all your different organisms living in there. So your difference is same species is population and your community is different species, right? But you're always talking about them living in a particular area. You have to kind of define the area when you define population. You can say the population of this county, people-wise, or you can say the population of the earth, people-wise, sure. You can also say the population of your house. But there's a big difference between the population in your house, hopefully, and the population in the whole county of it. Oh, some houses have more than others. So what's your ecosystem then? You got your population and a community. What's your ecosystem? It's where they live. Okay, so your ecosystem consists of your living and non-living things in your particular environment. Your environment can be anything. It can be big, it can be small. Your environment can be just this tiny little piece of a stump in your backyard. That's a little like a micro ecosystem. You could also say your ecosystem is a giant forest, right? You are liking it. He's eating a pepper like an apple over here. It's awesome. All right. So yeah, you can have an ecosystem of any size as long as you are defining it, but it's going to include the organisms and their environment. Now, biome. Okay, a biome is a way of defining a larger ecosystem. So it's a community of vegetation and wildlife adapted to a specific climate. So when you're talking about biomes, you're talking about you can have an ecosystem in a tree trunk that's rotting in your backyard, but your biome is going to be much, much bigger. And it is generally described by topographic features, the earth, things you can't change, the elevation, things like that, amount of precipitation, which all goes into climate, right? So we've got different kinds of biomes, and then we'll go over those in a minute. And then we have different kinds of features in your biomes, ecosystems, and whatnot. So you've got biotic and abiotic. Do you know the differences? What's the difference?
Biotic factors are living things.
There you go.
And abiotic factors.
There you go. Perfect. So if you put an A in front of something, you're meaning the opposite of, right? So we're going to have a bunch of these root words today, which is really helpful. So bio means living. So biotic would be living thing. And abiotic would be a non-living thing. So you're biotic or you're living, or also you're once living. So your tree that fell over and is rotting is still a biotic factor because it was alive at one point. Now you can get really sticky and go, well, the rocks were once dinosaurs and but at this point they have changed into something that is no longer
dinosaur.
Yes, it's no longer like a carbon-based organic matter. Then you're talking about stuff that is not biotic. So the soil is a combination. It's biotic because it has matter in it that has decayed, but it also has minerals and rocks and sand, things like that are abiotic. So in this picture, you got a couple different biotic things going on here. Obviously, you've got your living mushrooms and your living moss, but you've also got this felled tree, which was alive at one point. So it is biotic, even though it's no longer alive. And then you got your non-living factors. So another great example would be your water. Water's not alive, full of living things, but not alive. And your sunlight and your air and your wind and all these things are your not abiotic factors. So your book gave a brief description of different methods, ecological methods. These are ways for researching ecology. And I just wanted to touch on them so you realize that there's different things going on. So observation, obviously observation can involve all your senses. It doesn't have to just be looking, right? You don't have to just be looking to observe. Experimentation. So this picture is, I can't remember which college. I thought I would remember, but I don't. I want to say it's Iowa. So this is actually an agricultural school's experimental farming field where they have specific vegetation growing in these little patches, right? So they have all that together there. And you can see some of them are not doing so well and others are doing really well. So I don't know what they're experimenting on. They could be trying different fertilizers. They could be trying different amounts of irrigation, different species.
I'm looking up in that top left corner
Top left corner.
on it, in it.
Oh, right here. Whatever that
in the
is?
Field.
Oh, this thing?
Yeah.
I
all
think,
that dead stuff.
I don't think it's dead stuff. I think it is like maybe irrigation, like maybe they're it's water or something like that in tanks. I can't tell exactly what it is. So you've got observation, experimentation. You've also got modeling, right? Obviously, it's very helpful. Models are super helpful in just kind of conceptualizing larger concepts. So what's ecology? So ecology is your study of organisms and their environment. And then as we talked about, your biomes are ecosystems sharing your climate and your organisms. So you've got ecosystems within biomes. So human economies and ecology are linked. So this is kind of interesting when you really start thinking about it. But your basic concept is you've got your biosphere, right? And your biosphere is providing all your resources for everything we do industry-wise, right? So if it says firms, I guess that's a great word. You could, I don't know, you could have picked anything. A firm could be anything from a logging company to a lawyer's office, right? But in any case, they're all using resources that are coming from the natural environment and households as well. So it shows here, this is a good graphic because it shows where everything is interlinked. You've got your households are using your natural resources that they're then paying Walmart, and Walmart's, taking natural resources to produce other things. It could be the really obvious ones like a logging company, or it could be something way, way down the line. If you think about a lawyer's office, they're obviously not going out cutting down trees, but they're using paper, right? They're using graphite, and all these things are coming from the environment. So also is the food that they're all eating to be able to get up in the morning and do their work, and the coffee they're drinking all day. So economies deal with human houses, ecology deals with nature's houses. It's based on energy and nutrients. Raw materials required for human economies come from nature, so economics and ecology are interdependent systems. So just so that you know, if you find this interesting, there are entire fields of study on this, entire fields of study based on this interdependence. So it's usually called human ecology. These are some of many textbooks and college courses. And so that you know, a quick search, and I did a very quick search, I found 250 college programs for environmental economics, 250. And I checked out a website called environmentalscience.org, and they listed the following programs as the top programs for environmental economics. So if you were interested in such a topic, you might go to Berkeley or Colorado State for your undergrad. You might go to Duke or the University of Rhode Island for your master's. And you might go, if you want a PhD, to Bren, which is part of University of California, Santa Barbara. It's Bren School of Environmental Science. And then there's also University of Vermont, which would be a fabulous place to spend your time, because talk about beautiful, beautiful. So if you really are interested in human economics or environmental economy, these are places to look. So you had this graphic in your work, right? All right, so what's this guy down here? What will we call him by himself? What did y'all put?
Organisms.
Yeah, an organism would be one thing you could put. You could put a species or an individual, right? He's any of the above. The what? He's a deer. I think he's an elk.
Yeah, elk.
Either an elk or a moose.
Yeah,
Mm.
But I don't think the antlers are correct for a moose.
Yeah, I think he's an elk.
a big old deer.
Anybody ever been to the
300 pounds.
it's in Pine Mountain. It's the Georgia Wildlife Safari in Pine Mountain. So we went this year for the first time. It was maybe a little sketch in that, if you talk to zoologists and people that work at zoos, they have very, very strict standards by which they care for their animals, and they tend to get really strung up on people that don't do it the same way. So there's this place in Pine Mountain, and I totally recommend, if you can swing it, go sometime when the weather's nice and you can have your windows down, because it is the wildest experience. But they have elk, and not only do they have elk, they have zebras, water buffalo, bison, giraffes, all kinds of things, pigs, all sorts of goats, different creatures. And you drive your car, or you can use one of their cars, through this park on this little dirt road, and no joke, you buy food, and no joke, they come into your car. Like they put their head in your car and you feed. I've had a zebra, which I never thought I would see a zebra like 2 feet from you, let alone touch it and feed it. And the funniest to me were the bison and the water buffalo. The water buffalo will straight up, like if you stop feeding them, they come in further. Hello. And it's wild because their heads are this big. My whole car was covered in mud inside and out because they kept sticking their heads in. But it's a really neat experience to get close to something. And they're elk, which is why I brought it up. There's both male and female elk. And the female elk were so sweet. They were really personable. They come right up to you. Yeah.
I think the videos of the scared people and the animals coming in the car, like screaming. And animals are just like,
Yeah. Hey,
why aren't we
what's
feeding
up?
me?
Feed me something. Yeah.
So I live in the mountains, so there's a bunch of wildlife. So we had
Oh, yeah.
deer come up like next to our car,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a bear 4 feet from our car. We had the
Oh, you have a bear?
yeah.
That is cool.
We live in the neighborhood and there was just a deer in front of like.
We have deer all the time because the river's there. He found a picture. You find it? It was again. What you want to say, Jack?
So our backyard
Ozzy.
is like
No.
20 feet deep, and then it's just a ravine
Like,
that goes down
here.
like
Uh-huh.
an acre. So we have like tons of deer, and they just come and just eat. It's really cool to watch because I'm on the second story, so I get to see them.
We have a bunch here of does, a ton. And then this spring, one of them had twin fawns right over here behind my neighbor's house. And she brings them out and you can see them. It's really cool. They get pretty close. So yeah, you have your individual, right? So if you have one deer and you see it in your yard, it's an individual. Altogether though, you'd say you have a population. As long as they're the same species, it's a population. So what do we call the deer and the rabbit and the bear and the beaver together? They're community. That's
And the
right.
trees.
And the
owl.
trees, correct. And the owl. Oh yeah, I missed him. You're right. There's the owl. Okay, cool. And then also you have everybody in their ecosystem. So now we're including the water, the land, the air, everything, their environment and the community within it. So it's, as you can see, it's concentric circles, almost like a Venn diagram kind of, where you've got, you know, your ecosystem contains your community, that contains your populations, that contains your individuals. And then beyond that, you have your biome. And beyond that, you have what?
The world.
What's the last one? What's the word that we're using? Biosphere. That's right. Everything together is your biosphere. So then we have our producers and consumers. Okay, here's where we get to test out our knowledge of Greek and Latin roots. Yeah, of course, babe. Get anything you want. Did you find it?
Found the deer one. I can't find it.
Oh, wow. We can always post it in the Wix store and people can see it because that's pretty cool. All right, so we're going to test our knowledge here of our Greek and Latin roots here. So we have different producers. Producers are going to be living things that make their own food. And the first thing you think of probably are the ones that are photosynthetic, right? That's probably where you're going. Trees, fruit, but there's other kinds too. Usually sunlight's going to be the source. And in this forest, you can see you have all these big trees, and these guys are using the sunlight to produce their energy. And then you've also got consumers. These are general overarching terms. We're going to get more specific in a second. And your consumers are things that require other living things. So what are you? You're a consumer. Absolutely you are. And other organisms are your source of energy. And these guys are a great example because what do they eat? What do they eat?
Eat bugs.
They eat bugs, right? And what do the bugs eat? Plants or other bugs, right? Yep. Jack, what'd you want?
Okay, so I learned that if, like mother like rabbits get so stressed out they'll eat their own young. So do they count as producers?
That's hilarious. No, because they're consuming something for sure. It's a good one though. Good question. All right, so here's where we get into the fun stuff. Photo, autotroph. Okay, I'll give you the tricky one. Troph is going to have to deal with energy. You'll talk about trophic levels, and you'll see this as a chunk, usually at the end of a word. Troph is to do with energy. So what would a photo, autotroph do?
Light,
Yep, light's photo, self. Okay, so put that together. Light, self, energy. And you get an organism that can produce its own food using light and water and carbon dioxide and other chemicals. So auto would be self. So an automobile does what?
So
mobilizes.
Loses itself, right? An autograph is what?
Self-writing.
Yeah, you wrote it yourself. You signed your name yourself. What's a photograph? There you go. Written with light. There you go. So light, self, energy. This is where you get your photo autotroph. There's a bunch of these. They're kind of fun. And these are the guys that do your photosynthesis. So when you think of producers, it's probably the first thing you think of, right? Trees, green things, things with leaves. All right. Things that look like that. But you also have litho autotrophs. Who knows what litho is?
Isn't it related to earth and snow?
Stone. Stone is it. Litho would be stone or rock. Lithography is the process they use to like break up kidney stones.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a good one. So, and then there's a monolith, like a big rock. Okay, so lithoautotrophs, and these can be broken down into different things. So yes, earth and soil. Now you got your chemoautotrophs, chemo meaning
Chemical.
chemicals, and then photolithotropes. So what would be the difference between a chemoautotroph and a photolithotroph?
One uses light, one uses chemical reaction.
Yeah, this one uses chemicals to produce energy for itself. And then this one is using light and minerals basically to produce energy. So most your chemoautotrophs, here's another great word, are extremophiles. What's an extremophile?
Something that lives in extreme environments.
Lives is right, but think about this FPHIL. Where have we seen that before? What if I said something was hydrophilic? Likes or loves. Philadelphia, philos, your Greek word, right? Remember how they have like all those words for love? Y'all have heard that? They have all those different kinds of love. Philos is like, yeah, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. So when you see extremophile, means it really likes or really loves extreme conditions. So you got bacteria, and then this says archae, but it's also archaebacteria. It's just shortening the word. And these are ones that live in super hostile environments. We're talking hostile, like deep sea vents. You wouldn't want to be hanging out down there. You wouldn't make it. And they are primary producers in their ecosystems. There's no sunlight down there. They're not using light in general. And they're going to convert carbon dioxide into carbon. Or sometimes they're going to use inorganic, with chemosynthesis, you're going to use inorganic forms of carbon, like that which you would get from substrate, from a rock or whatever. And that is what they're going to turn into usable energy. Because remember, living things are all going to be using these hydrocarbons, right? What were in them? What were in hydrocarbons? Organic organisms.
Hydrogen, oxygen, carbon.
There you go. Right. So this is an example of one of these bacteria.
Are water bears producers or consumers?
I believe they are consumers. Yeah. So here are some consumers. Now, I'll tell you this. When we start getting into scavengers and detrivores, it gets a little tricky, but we'll get there in a minute. Here's one, heterotroph. If an autotroph produces its own energy, a heterotroph, what?
Take some else's.
Yep, hetero meaning different. Get it from something other than yourself. Hetero being different. And we'll deal with hetero, especially when we get into genetics. You'll see that a lot. So then also you got organotroph. That one's pretty obvious, right? We're talking about organic, meaning hydrocarbons again. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, your organotrophs. So they are going, they get their energy from an organic compound. So here's a question. Are you an organotroph? Think about it.
Probably.
Definitely. What do you eat? Plants, animals. These are all organic compounds, right? They're all containing your hydrocarbons, right? You're composed of hydrocarbons. Something that eats you is an organotroph. That lion that thought you looked delicious is going to be an organotroph. So you are both an organotroph and a heterotroph. So then you have herbivores, right? That one you guys know. You've known it forever. Herbivores eat plant material. And you got carnivores. And you all know that too. Where's that dog? Oh, you here? Come here. Let me show you this example. So think about a horse. Anybody ever fed a horse? Anybody ever not fed a horse or been up close to a horse?
I fed one, but it's been
Do
years.
you remember what the teeth look like?
Yeah.
What the teeth look like?
Little
Yep. What the tops of their teeth look like? The surfaces.
black.
Flat. Very flat. Why? What do they eat?
Grass.
Grass, hay. Yeah. So they need to be able to grind that material, right? They grind their, you ever seen them eat? Mouths are going everywhere. All right, so they're herbivores, right? We all agree that you never seen a horse like hunt down a bird and eat it, right? Because that would be really weird.
That would be scary.
I mean, if they get, yeah, if they get a worm in the mouthful of grass they're eating, they're not gonna spit it out, but that's not what they're eating. Well, Michael's eating an apple over there. Ozzy's staring at it because he loves apples. But look at Ozzy's teeth. Yeah, share.
It's like, no.
What is he meant to eat? Meat. How do you know?
Sharp.
The canines.
Big canines in the front. How about the back? What do his molars look like? Are they flat?
I can't.
They're not flat. They're not flat at all. They're all still very pointy and sharp. But I just said, if we drop the apple on the floor, he's gonna eat it.
Do you want me to give him a core?
No. So what does that mean? So what that means is he's a carnivore, and you can tell by these choppers that he's a carnivore, but he's also what you would call an opportunistic omnivore, meaning if he has the opportunity to eat something else, he will, but that's not what he's meant to eat. It's not what he's built to eat. He wouldn't survive well without meat because his body is not built for it. Right? Like if all you ever fed a horse was a bucket full of worms, it might eventually eat some, but it's not going to do well. It's not going to do well. And if all you ever fed him was apples every day, he'd probably be pretty sick. And I would not want that job. So then you have omnivores, which we know. All right. So which of your teeth remind you of the horse's teeth? What you got? The front, you think? What do you think?
The back teeth.
I'd say back. They're not quite as flat, but they're molars, right? They're not pointy. They have pointy tops on them, but they're generally more like little cubes, like a horse. And which of your teeth look like Ozzy's teeth? The ones in the front. So not only does Ozzy have canines like we do, but you see he's got 4 incisors just like you do. 4 across the front and then these big old canines, right? So if you have front teeth like a carnivore and back teeth like an herbivore, that means you're what? You're an omnivore, absolutely. So omnivores are going to be consumers. All these guys are consumers, herbivores and carnivores. And you'll see in a second, we get to trophic levels, they change. The quantity, populations within those levels change. So decomposers, here's where we get weird. This is where it gets weird. So you have decomposers, and these are things that eat dead animal and plant material. All right, so think about a vulture. And then also think about a bacteria that decomposes dead things. These are very different, right? Very different. So you've got also detrivores, and those are like, think about, have you ever seen a yellow jacket or ants like completely shred some leftover chicken wing or, you know, whatever? I had a little snake skeleton in my yard that I watched form as the yellow jackets just completely devour a little dead snake. So these are detrivores. They're eating little tiny lumps of stuff. Scavengers, of course, would be like your vultures, right? So sometimes you're going to see scavengers and detrivores lumped in with decomposers, and other times you will see them lumped in with omnivores or herbivores or whatever. They kind of bridge both gaps. They serve the same purpose as a decomposer, but they're not the same as like a fungus or a bacteria. So a lithotrope, all right, we did the chemolithotrope and the whatever lithotrope. So lithotrope is going to be an organism that gets its energy from compounds, and this is actually electron transfer and it gets picky. So we won't do too much of that. But here's a fun one: lithoheterotrope. All right, so what we have here are organisms that don't have the ability to fix carbon dioxide. So what they do is they consume additional organic compounds, carbon compounds, and break them apart and use only their carbon. So we're talking about a very few species of bacteria. So just so you know, it gets further and further down the line, we get further and further away from the very basic, simple 3 groups you're used to. Maybe the 4th if you add decomposers in. And then this is a fun word. For real, the word is actually mixotroph. That's not a joke. And those are organisms that use organic material, complement their carbon dioxide fixation source. So they're a mix between autotroph and heterotroph. And again, we're talking about fewer and fewer organisms, and those that you probably won't associate with. And then your lithoautotrophs were on that previous slide. Yep. So so these were questions in your binder. You may want to look. So autotrophs for photosynthesis, what do they use? They take the power of the sun and they convert it to what kind of energy? Yep, goes from light energy to chemical energy. And they store that chemical energy as carbohydrates. And carbohydrates you can think of as things like what? What's an example of a carbohydrate?
Sugar.
That's one, yeah, sugar, starch, these sorts of things, lipids.
Potato.
Lipids, yep, the potato is one. So can some organisms survive without the sun?
Yes.
Yes, where would you maybe find something like that? Yeah, bottom of the ocean is a good place. All right, and then can organisms create their own energy out of nothing? No. Why? What law are we dealing with here?
Conservation of energy.
Conservation of energy is one. What's another one we're also dealing with?
Conservation of mass.
Yeah, mass to a degree, and also matter, right? I mean, if you've got a molecule, if you've got a molecule of oxygen and it's moving around, or even one little atom of carbon, it's still moving around. It's not disappearing, right?
Yeah.
All right, so then let's look into this next set. Do y'all need a stretch break? Sydney needs a stretch break. Somebody poke her. You up? She's like, I am really tired today. I feel you. Energy flow. All right, energy flow. Food chains, food webs. You've seen these, right? Somebody tell me what's the main difference between the food chain, food web? Cole.
Food chain is just the path of energy that goes through a given environment between animals, essentially being animals, and organisms eating organisms. And the food web is the connection of all those chains.
How they're connected, right? Okay.
Also, just the food web is more in-depth.
Right. Right. Perfect example. So if you look here at the picture here of the food web, you've got this little mouse over here. Well, the mouse is eaten by 3 different things. He's not just eaten by one thing. And this grasshopper here, well, the grasshopper is going to be eaten by multiple things as well. And it's going to get eaten by the spider. And it shows an interdependence, which you don't see in the food chain. But the food chain is really good for showing energy transfer and trophic levels, which you see when you see that trophic pyramid, which we're going to look at in a second. So when you get to the trophic pyramid, that's this deal here. You've seen this before? So this, remember we said troph means what? Energy, right? Okay, so the idea that you need to keep in your mind here is there's a certain quantity of vegetation, right, at the bottom. This contains the most energy. And this amount is required to support these 4 guys here. All right, you have to have this much vegetation to support these 4 rabbits. If you have less vegetation, these 4 rabbits are not going to make it. Maybe you'll have 3 rabbits, okay? But up a level, you've got the rabbits. You're going to need at least 4 of them to support these 2 snakes. These 2 snakes won't have enough food if you only have 3 rabbits. You're going to mess something up. So if you've lost some vegetation, you lost a rabbit, you're going to lose a snake. And then above that, you have this hawk here, and he's at the very, very tippy top. The hawk needs this much vegetation to support his life. If you don't have this much vegetation, you don't have a hawk, because you don't have a rabbit and you don't have a snake, and then you don't have a hawk. So you got your producers at the bottom, and then your primary consumers. Your primary consumers are pretty much going to always be, what kind of animals are the rabbits? What kind of consumers are they? Herbivores, right? Okay. And then your secondary consumers can be omnivores, can be herbivores, can be carnivores, but at the top, you're always going to have what?
Carnivore.
Always going to have your carnivores at the top. There are going to be fewer animals at the top because there is less energy. Why? You started with a ton of energy. Where does it go? As you move up, where does it go?
Entropy.
There you go. Okay. So you're dealing with energy being lost typically as heat. So if you go and run a mile, you're going to burn a lot. Yeah, I know you did. You're going to burn a lot of calories, but you're burning them while you're sleeping too. You're burning them sitting perfectly still. It's part of your life process. So what's a calorie a measure of?
Energy.
Energy in the form of
Heat.
heat. Calorie is a measure of heat, right? Remember that chemistry?
Yeah.
So a calorie is a measure of heat. So you need a certain amount of units that can produce heat in order to have your life function. Well, so does the rabbit. And some of that is going to get lost, and it's going to get lost through heat loss. So if these rabbits are running around, they're going to be losing a lot more energy than if they're just sitting there getting fat eating grass. Rabbits don't get fat very often because they just eat grass, right? I mean, we all ate grass. We probably wouldn't look like Americans look, but we do. So as your energy goes up, you're going to lose heat. And this shows you an example of your kilocalories as they go. So you got 10,000 down here, and by the time you get to the top, there's only 10, meaning that of these 10,000 kilocalories, which is 1,000 calories, so 10,000 calories at the bottom, there's only going to be but so much of that left at the top. And that's why there's always going to be fewer animals at the top, because they need that energy to support their life. And it takes all of this to keep the eagle, or yeah, I guess it's an eagle, keep that eagle alive. So the biomass pyramid shows sort of a similar thing. It shows you kind of how the organisms fit into the trophic levels. So you have 1 million kilograms of phytoplankton needed for one sea lion. And he's only going to weigh 1,000 kilograms, but all this mass is what you're talking about in this case. So if you're looking at the mass, you need 1 million kilograms worth of phytoplankton mass wise to support the mass of 1 kilogram of sea lion. And so now you got to ask yourself, well, here's the question. If you're talking about law of conservation of matter, where's it going? Where's it going as you're moving up? Yeah, waste, right. You're going to be burning some of energy as heat. So you're going to lose the energy as heat, and then you're going to lose mass as waste. Exactly. It's exactly where it's going to go. So this sea lion needs all these guys. So the zooplankton need the phytoplankton, and the herring need the zooplankton and the phytoplankton. And then you get to this poor dude at the top. So this is why when you're talking about ecosystems, you got to look at what's at the bottom, the producers. And if you start messing with the amount of producers you have, you're going to affect all of the guys at the top. So we tend to look at things like, oh, wow, we're worried about that poor eagle. We're going to destroy, or the owl. We're going to destroy the owl's habitat because we think the owl's cool, right? Everything's the owl's cool. But yeah, if you're building all the houses and knocking out all the forests and all the grass is gone, you know, it works its way down. It's all part of the same system, right? And the same thing here for terrestrial stuff. Here's your grass, and then your snakes. And this is just grasshoppers and mice and snakes. So your food chain versus food web, to summarize it, your food chain outlines who eats whom, and then your web shows all that different interdependence. So each organism in an ecosystem occupies a specific trophic level or position in the food chain or web. So things are either producers, consumers, or both, sometimes in the middle. Well, not producers, herbivores, omnivores, sorry. I spoke stupid.
There are some plants.
Yeah, there are some.
The base like up there as well.
Yep.
Producer and a consumer.
Mm-hmm. So something like that is actually taking nutrients from another organism and combining it with the production process that it has going on for its photosynthetic processes, which is pretty complex, but really cool. So cycles of matter. Y'all are familiar with some of these. Some of them you probably never even thought about before. But what we're talking about are these biogeochemical. Oh, there's one. So that's an easy one. What's that one? Biogeochemical.
Living Earth.
Right. Life, earth, chemicals, how they all go together. So these are pathways or processes or cycles. What'd you find? Where's the typo?
Consumers.
Where is it? Oh, I didn't spell that, but you're right. I stole that. It says concumers. I did not do that one, but you caught it. I didn't see it. Very good. All right, there you go. That's 2 for y'all. I should have attempted to fix it if I'd seen it. So we're talking about all of these different cycles, some that you're really used to probably. So your water cycle, you're probably familiar with, right? Everybody knows this. This goes back to elementary school. Today, we are in the precipitation phase, very clearly. We have other things going on at the same time. Be aware that your plants in your environment are also releasing water into the air. They're part of the water cycle. Sometimes we leave them out, but they're absolutely part of that process. So water cycle is one that we're used to. We know this one. Then we get into these nutrient cycles, and some of these get complex. Some of them make a whole lot of sense, and some are like, ugh. But you think about this one, this is when we're talking about, you know, you're pumping dinosaurs into your car so you can drive down the road and go pick up your Taco Bell. So, you know, this is your carbon. Where's your carbon go, right? Carbon goes everywhere. Your carbon, you've got trees, right? and your trees are carbon, and then they eventually decompose, and then they turn into oil and fossil carbon, and then we pump that back out, and it goes here into human emissions, and round and round and round you go. So be aware that these nutrient cycles exist. Have a basic idea of what leads to what. Don't expect you to memorize all the steps in each one, because it's the concept that matters. As long as you have the concept that there's a cycle and it's always in motion. This one is I think, a little more difficult to understand, because you're dealing specifically with bacteria that you don't see with your eyes. So maybe it's a little harder to conceptualize. But the bacteria in the soil are part of what we would call the nitrification process. It's nitrogen fixing. And I mean, you could spend your life studying nitrogen fixation. It's a complicated thing. See, you got ammonification and nitrification. It goes on and on. But basically, you've got nitrogen. Remember, we did our schnapps, the CHNOPS. There's an N in there, right? So your nitrogen is going to get down into the soil, and it's going to get there often through waste, right? Very often through waste. And when it gets down into the soil, there are bacteria that are able to make it usable nitrogen again, send it back up into the atmosphere as gas. Most of the air you breathe in is what? What element?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen. Most of what you're breathing in is nitrogen. You're using the oxygen, but you're inhaling nitrogen all the time. It's just what's around. And then it ends up cycling right back around. Now you've also got a phosphorus cycle. Same kind of concept where it goes down into the soil. But in this case, we're talking about rocks, sediment, rocks getting dissolved, ocean sediment. But it's all, again, part of this process and going round and round and round. And this last one here, I was really bummed because that provider did not have another slide. All of my slides were this same picture of waves and a volcano. And I get to this one and there was not one. And I was very disappointed. But anyway, it's closest I could find. So when you're dealing with the oxygen cycle, this one too, this has to do with you breathe in oxygen, trees, quote unquote, breathe out, photosynthetic organisms breathe out oxygen. And then you've got also atmospheric oxygen and this whole process, right? Rocks weather, they release oxygen, all that. So there's our schnapps again. These are our 4 elements that make up over 95% of your body. They also make up almost every living thing. Most living things are made of these right here. They're the most common elements in all living things. So they are oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, also phosphorus and sulfur when you add in those last 2. If you can remember schnapps, you got it. I've had schnapps in my head since I was like 19, so I know you can remember it. So your schnapps is what you use to remember. It's your mnemonic, and it's carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So matter moves through the ecosystem in cycles. These are your high points from this little section. And then chemical and physical processes in an ecosystem include things like what? What were some of your examples? Cloud formation, precipitation, lightning, water flowing. Did anybody have other examples of that? Chemical, physical processes? What else? What else? I'm sure you guys have stuff. Wind maybe would be one. Anybody have anything different? I can't remember exactly where. It's at the bottom of one of those first couple pages, I think. So there was this illustration. Oh, what'd you get?
Slide.
Yeah, things sliding down, gravity. Yeah, there you go.
It also then show where water
Mhm.
flows, evaporates, flows.
Right. So this illustration draws an analogy between the way energy drives matter to cycle in an ecosystem, the way water causes a water wheel to turn. There's going to be a lot in this particular curriculum. Oh, you found the bear? Oh, look at the bear. Oh my gosh, that is so cool.
That's outside of the house.
That's a beautiful black bear. Can you hold it up so you can see your black bear? Gorgeous. So pretty. And they're not huge. You know, they're big, but they're not like those crazy, those Kodiak bears or whatever that are just giant.
When you go to Kate's Cove.
Oh, they've said, I haven't tested this hypothesis, but I've heard from people that black bears are actually bears you can scare away. So don't take my word for that. But they say, I've heard people say if you're hiking and there's a black bear, I mean, Michael, you don't know, you're scouting. Who else is scouting that might know it? You're supposed to be able to, and they should run.
You're supposed to scare away almost every bear.
Yeah. Except for those like Kodiak and grizzly ones, right? Yeah, which we're not around. So
I
Yeah,
heard
I've never
from,
been near a grizzly. So
Yeah.
I was just said, be wild.
don't want to be.
A
My
Scout
hands.
trip that
Mm-hmm.
you, that you're supposed, that they sung happy birthday aggressively at the bears to make
Oh,
them.
that'll
go
do it.
away.
There you go.
I saw that sometimes.
Yeah, they can be intimidated. So, other objects that cycle round and round and round. The book examples that they gave were windmills, car engines, bicycle pedals. I'm sure you guys came up with similar
Food
things.
processing plant.
Hmm?
Food processing.
Food processing plant. That's a good one. Oh yeah, any assembly line. Those are really cool. And then we have this little graphic here. So this is just showing, what was the next question in the book? How was it posed?
Explain why Earth is considered a closed system.
Oh, Earth is a closed system. Yeah. Why is Earth a closed system?
Because the atmosphere traps everything.
There you go.
The only things that are coming in, are going out are asteroids
Mhm.
and space programs.
There you go. All right. And then what's this other graphic showing, do you think?
What highways will do.
What highways will do. There you go. Yep. All right. So every time you build a road, you have to consider all of the possible consequences of it, obviously. Not just running over animals, but runoff is a big one. Runoff is a really, really big one. If you've ever, and for those of you who aren't driving yet, the absolute most dangerous slippery road surface is not when it's pouring, it's when it's barely rained, because all that oil and grease that drops off of cars just floats just a little bit when there's barely rain. That's when it's super slippery. When it starts raining like this, it washes it off and it goes off into the environment, which isn't great, but it's not as slippery as it is when it's barely raining. So this is how water cycles through plants, right? Comes up through the roots, goes out through the leaves. Veins are going to carry water into the leaves. When we get more specific about plant anatomy, we'll have names for all these parts, which are really kind of cool. The part that takes water up, the part that takes water down. And then I'm sure you could diagram the water cycle because you guys are highly capable of diagramming the water cycle.
It's not gonna look very good, but we can do it.
It's not going to look very good, but you can do it, huh? So your homework for this lesson is going to be on teacher ease. All right. So what you guys are going to start seeing with your homework, especially if you've been around for a while, is a lot of it's going to be on teacher ease, because it's just, I think it's better to try and not track down all the papers that we kept not finding. And then we switched the homework to after the lesson. So what would be really smart today would be for first, we're going to finish our 2 truths and a lie that we didn't finish the other day. But then what would be really smart is, since class will be wrapping up and the homework is going to be always following your lesson, for you all to take a minute, get your homework done. If you have your phone with you, or if you don't have your phone with you, if you have a computer, you can always bring it and knock that out. Otherwise, you can just discuss it with your classmates. So you know what your answer is going to be, go home and you're done, right? Okay, so let's see, what else? Was there anything else for you guys? I don't think there was. I think that was pretty much you guys with your cycles and all that fun stuff. All right, let me see. Your next lesson is going to be, it will do its thing and pull up like I asked it to. So what you're going to do, like I told you with your lab, is you're going to write down all your stuff in your little chart, and we'll talk about the results next week. And next week we're going to hope that the weather is nice so we can go outside for lab. If it's not, I'll come up with something different. But we're going to really hope that we can go out, because it should be very nice. So your lesson this week will be 2. If it will open. There you go. Maybe. Oh, this is going to be, actually, there's your homework. I'll put it up so you can see it. But let me come. That's the one that's coming next from lesson 3. I'll open the other. That's your homework 3 lesson. So, I mean, lesson 3 homework. I can't speak. Gosh. All right. So you're going to be doing.
No test this week.
No test. Nope. You're going to do, this time you're doing 2 different chapters. So there's a lot of reading this week. It's 4, 1 through 5. And then it's 5, 1 through 3. And you're going to be covering, oh, wait a minute. Is that this one? Maybe I have my labs out of order. I got to double check my labs. Might not be the outside one. No. Okay. So I'll look at that in a second. So you guys are going to be studying this week all these concepts of niches and community interaction. So it's more ecology, and it's more down to things like competition. What's fighting what to get for resources. Resources are always going to be limited. You're gonna go over succession, and succession has to do with what happens when a forest burns, or a builder comes and clears a bunch of land for lots. Life comes back, and it always comes back in a very specific order. And if you don't already know, by the time you leave here next week, you'll be able to drive down the road and say, oh, they started to build something there and stopped. Because you'll be able to tell immediately. It's kind of crazy around here how much they've tried to build and stop, because you can spot it pretty quickly. And then you're going to go into your different types of biomes. And there's a lot of them, right? Aquatic ones, terrestrial ones, and populations, how they grow. It seems like a lot of reading, but it's not going to be too bad. So let's see, 2 truths and a lie. We left off over here, didn't we, with Dylan? Was it your turn? You went. So it was Ethan's turn. Was it your turn?
Yeah, I think so.
You were my 2 truths and a lie. Do you have them all thought out?
Sure, why, I'll figure it out, so.
I'll figure it out.
I think James also needs to.
Yeah,
go.
James needs to go and I need to go. Yeah.
So, my favorite color is green. I've broken my arm in 4 places, and I am 17.
I think it's the arms.
Yeah, because you said it earlier.
You had said it was 3 earlier, and
Oh.
we already know your favorite color is green.
Oh no, I've been foiled. London, you go.
So for those of you who don't know London, London is Ethan's fam and he hangs sometimes. So hi, London.
Hello.
Features and on, bud.
Oh.
Come on, you guys.
I just broke my arm.
Did you say you've never broken it or you have
Never broke my arm.
never broken an arm? Okay. Just thinking.
You need Jeopardy music. We're expert at that.
I went to a Christian school in pre-K.
What?
I have a sister.
You have a sister.
I don't have.
So wait. Never broken your arm, went to a Christian pre-K and has a sister.
I wonder which one.
I'm gonna guess the sister because
I'm gonna guess the pre-K.
What was your first option?
I think it's the sister.
I guess the sister.
The arm is the lie.
The arm is the lie.
Preschool.
The preschool one's the lie. You came up with it so solidly though. I was convinced. Ha! I was very convinced. I was like,
it was a lie because I did go to a Christian preschool.
ah. All right, your go, James. Have you thought up some?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe it.
All right.
Okay. My favorite movie is The Princess Bride.
Ooh,
My second favorite movie is Back to the Future.
that's good
And
too.
my third favorite movie is the third Harry Potter.
The first Harry Potter? Third Harry Potter. Oh gosh, this is so hard. Maybe it is.
wait, you can't actually swap the positions around for any of them. Otherwise, it would be 2 lies and a truth.
Oh my gosh, you're so Alex. Okay, that was the
So-
most Alex response of all time. So that means one of them is totally out then, if that's.
Yes, one of them has to be.
Oh my gosh.
replaced by a
The
completely
steps
new
of
movie.
logic in your head.
Back to the Future is out.
Oh, but that's so good. I like James. No, I
I
say
don't have a D6.
I'm gonna say the third Harry Potter is the
I'm
lie.
gonna
It's gonna be
guess
a different Harry Potter. That's
I'm
my
gonna
guess.
guess the first one, just
I'm gonna guess it's not the third Harry Potter movie. I'm gonna guess it's the
4.
exactly my thought.
Third one's great though.
I agree. I think it's my favorite. The first and the third are mine. It's not?
The third one's great.
Never seen a
All
Harry
right,
Potter
James,
movie.
out with it.
The third Harry Potter movie
What is your third favorite movie?
Okay.
We're on the right track, Jack. You and me. Okay, I'll do mine. I'll do mine. My two truths and a lie. I used to take dance classes. My favorite color is turquoise.
Very specific favorite color.
And I once had a collection of pig items that was about 200 pigs strong.
Am I allowed to answer?
No, you can't answer.
Yes.
You can't answer.
So it was dance, turquoise, and kids. I'm guessing dance.
I think dance.
I don't think you
Just-
took
Just
dance.
looking around on the shelves.
Oh.
I think that is the lie.
Actually, I'm gonna guess
So
turquoise. I'm guessing turquoise. I can freeze it. This guy had said
I
that it
think
was
it's the
because
dance
of the
class
glass
because I
of the
believe you have
turquoise.
to-
Oh, Alex is really thinking over here. He's trying to reason.
I know.
That's hilarious. So my favorite color is purple, but I really like this turquoise. But it's not my
And
favorite.
It said that it was
I've been
because
watching.
of the light hits the glass.
That's
It
exactly
makes it
what,
look
yeah. You have to be
turquoise.
really careful decorating with purple, so I don't have very much. I have some up
That's
in my
why
bedroom,
it's
but
all
not a lot.
turquoise.
Yeah, because it's a little crazy. So I'm gonna take my screen off the TV for a minute because I wanted to tell you about your homework. I'm gonna walk you through with some stuff. The what? Oh, the TV? I mean, yeah, the computer settings are all purple, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, my car has purple on it. That's kind of a dead giveaway. So, you know. All right, so the way your homework's gonna work this week is it's Teacher E, so if you have your phone or whatever, you can probably knock it out. If you don't, I may even be able to give you turns over here to log in and out on mine and get it done. Would it be great to get it done? It's one less thing, right? I'm all for that. I'm all for getting stuff done. Okay, I'm gonna open it up. You can't see it because it's my grade book and everyone's grades are in it, so you can't see it. Lesson 2, homework. Oops. All right. So it's going to be a teensy little, why did I open that? It came out big. Oh, okay. So it's not super teensy, just a little teensy. It's some multiple choice questions and whatever. It's like a little quiz, but it's not a quiz because it doesn't count as a quiz. It counts as homework. It's weighted like homework. So your first question, and you can write these down. If you have your computer with you, can go ahead and do it. If you don't, you can write these down. And if you know the answers, you can go ahead and write it down. We're not going to share what the answers are, but if you know it, you can write it down so that when you get home, you can just click, 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 click. So your first question is going to ask you to categorize something as biotic, abiotic, or both. And it's going to ask you about air. So you want to know, is air biotic, abiotic, or both? Your next one is going to ask the same question about biotic, abiotic, or both. And it's asking you about animals. See, these are easy because they're just homework questions. These aren't test questions.
What's your definition of air?
Air.
Everything you breathe in, or
Air. Yes, the gases around you.
just the gases or the molecules that are floating in the gases?
Air would not be, well, molecules floating in the molecules are making up the gas. But if you're talking about biotic, now there could be, okay, there can be biotic factors mixed into an abiotic factor. For example, you can have water. The water itself does not include the phytoplankton. The phytoplankton would be biotic, but the water would be abiotic. So it would be biotic factors living in an abiotic medium. Does that make sense? Okay. Clear as mud. And then it's going to ask you about categorizing another thing, biotic, abiotic, or both. And it's going to ask about bacteria. While we're stopped on bacteria, what we're dealing with in society right now is a virus, right? And we're going to talk more about it when we get to viruses and whatnot. But viruses, what's everybody's talking about today. So are viruses alive?
Not completely.
Yeah,
They are
correct.
exactly dead, but they aren't alive.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? They aren't exactly dead. They aren't exactly alive. They aren't alive by our standard definition of living, but they do contain DNA, right? And so as organisms that contain DNA, they will replicate. And if you remember very briefly, when we talked about DNA last year, we're going to talk about it more this year, obviously, but when DNA replicates, it can have a coding issue. You have your little, your codons, right, which are made of your 3 nucleotide bases. And sometimes one of those gets transcribed the wrong way, just like if you're writing a phone number down and you write the wrong number, right? And that's how you get a mutation, which is how you get a variant. So what we're dealing with now is delta variant, right? So it's the same organism, but now it has a different spot in it. A spot in its DNA is different, which means that if it enters your body and your body already has established an immune response to what it originally recognized, now it looks different. So that's why we're having such spreading.
Something similar also is what helps with evolution.
And so exactly, that's what drives evolution is mutations. Yeah,
Mutations and
entirely. Yep.
whether mutation makes you better or worse at dealing with something.
Yeah, because it's like Darwin said, it's not about what species is fittest, it's about what's most adaptable. That's what it has to do with, what's most adaptable. All right, so then, oh, and I will say this. So the longer, and this has been part of the issue, the longer a virus can live, whatever, not really live, the longer a virus can multiply and spread and move around and pass through people, the more chances you have for it to mutate. The more chances you have for it to mutate, the more likely you are to have a different strain, which is where we are now, right? We've gotten to a point where we have a different strain because it was in the environment long enough to change. So if this one that we have right now continues in the environment long enough to change, and we'll have another variant. And that's how we get things like, have you heard of MRSA? Anybody ever heard of MRSA? So MRSA is a particular strain of Staphylococcus bacteria that people catch staph all the time. It's common, especially in hospitals, really common. But MRSA is a type of staph that's mutated and is resistant to the antibiotics we use to treat staph. So when you get it, it's bad. And this is why and that's a bacteria. So bacteria, obviously, when they multiply and divide, they can have their DNA code wrong, which is how you get a mutation. So this is why if you think you're sick, or if you have sometimes people are like, oh, I think I'm sick, I'm just going to take this leftover antibiotic. The problem with that is if what you have isn't necessarily, maybe it's viral, the antibiotic isn't going to help anyway, but you start introducing that antibiotic to the environment, to the ecosystem, and the staph that's in the environment sees it so much, sooner or later you get a strain that is now resistant, which is how you get MRSA. And people that get MRSA is bad. Like it can be really awful, really, really bad. So then we've got another one of these categorized. So biotic, abiotic, or both, heat. So these are easy and fast. These are just homework ones. Like I said, the tests are obviously trickier. And then after heat, we move on to one more, I think it's one more, and that's plants. And that should be an easy one too. I should know that. You should be able to do them in your sleep. Oh no, one more. Soil. Oh, this one's tricky. Biotic, abiotic, or both. Soil. All right, so then you're going to want to, you're going to have some vocabulary words, and they're the terms that you've got in your book or whatever. So it's going to, you're going to want to write the definition with a vocabulary word that goes with a heterotroph that gains energy by eating only plants. So heterotroph, only plants. Should know where that goes. And then your next one would be a heterotroph gains energy by eating animals. Again, that one should be easy too. So your homework is like 5 minutes, right? Choking to death, I say. And a heterotroph that gains energy by eating both animals and plants. Again, click, click, click. You guys know these. A heterotroph that gains energy by feeding on disintegrated or eroded material. Disintegrated or eroded. So think about that. Would you categorize a vulture as something that feeds on disintegrated or eroded material, or Might that be something different? And then a heterotroph, which breaks down organic matter. Remember that one too? And a heterotroph that consumes dead organisms, but typically does not kill for food. So that's different. Doesn't kill it, but it'll eat it if it finds it. What do you call the dead organism that's being fed upon? Carcass is one with something? Carrion, that's the word we're looking for, carrion. Yep, a dead deer in the middle of the road is carrion. That's what we call it.
Lunch for a turkey vulture.
Lunch for a turkey vulture. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you guys. When this is done, I'll show you there is a turkey vulture at Dollywood. That's like a celebrity. Super cute.
There's a flock of turkey vultures living in Rose Jordan Park,
Where's that?
downtown Lawrenceville.
No. So you're gonna have a trophic pyramid to fill in. And you're gonna fill in things like, well, hang on, we're gonna fill in. It'll have your first, second, third level, all that kind of business. Go to the next, why won't you move? Because I didn't tap you exactly right. There you go. Oh, no, I said that. Go. Oh boy. Doesn't want to. So yeah, you're gonna have the same trip. Oh, that's what it is. Same pyramid, and you're gonna have a couple different places to answer the questions for it. So that should be pretty easy. So next week, your homework after your next lesson will be one of those where you go online and look, and there's an image, and it's like, where'd it go? Oh, I closed it. Anyway, it's an image, and you're gonna have to read what's on the paper, look at the pictures, and you're gonna ascertain some stuff from it. You're gonna actually have to like think outside the box for a minute. If I can close this. There it goes. I'll open it and show you what I mean. So you're gonna have some homework that's gonna look like, for example, here we go. Open up, open up. There we go. And I'm gonna open this, put my screen back up again one more time to show you what I mean. Because some of it's a little different than what we've done in the past for homework. I like this better. Yes.
What is your address? My mom wants.
No, I got it already.
Okay.
She's sending somebody else. She'll want to come back and visit on her birthday. Tell her I said happy birthday, Lily. Or Ethan, somebody tell her that. There you go. So you're going to have some questions this year that look a little different from what we're used to. And I like these because they really make you think. And some of these some questions similar to this might actually show up on your test. And these are, gosh, why did I do that like 4 times? Okay, here we go. So you're gonna have stuff like this, where it's gonna give you, this is actually in your book, it's this chapter mystery in your book. And it's gonna talk, after next week's reading, it'll make a lot more sense, obviously, but it's gonna talk about this particular wolf population in this particular location. And it's gonna give some stories about it, like some background, there's a narrative about it. And then you're gonna get asked questions about it it's not like filling in vocabulary. You're gonna have to do some interpretation here, which I think is much better for you. You have to really kind of think it through a bit. All right, does anybody have any questions about anything? Tests, how everything went last week with the test? Everybody's grading on the test is done. Is everybody good with that? Are we cool? All right, so we have just a couple minutes till Miss Jackie's moving in and we're switching out.
I have another 2 truths and a lie, but I forgot.
I was gonna say, who has another 2 truths and a lie? You. Me.
I have one question.
Yes. All right, how about this one? How about, we were talking we didn't get so far with the